Hey everyone, this is Mike, and yesterday I finally finished my first playthrough of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, so I thought I'd talk about it a little bit in today's video, maybe get some of you guys interested in the game as well. Now, when it comes down to spoilers and that kind of stuff, of course, this game is incredibly story-driven, so it's gonna be hard to not show any spoilers or that kind of stuff, so that's why I started a new save file, started back in chapter 1, so you'll see about the first 10, maybe 15 minutes of the gameplay, depends on how long this video is going to be. But that's all you're going to be getting for spoilers from me. I'm going to try to keep it as spoiler free as possible, so the only thing you'll see is from chapter 1, the first 10 to 15 minutes of gameplay, depending on how long this video is. If you don't want to see anything, just minimize the video. There's also no background sounds or anything like that, because my capturing software / hardware is a little bit outdated and the sound quality is not that great. So that's why I decided to just leave out the sound entirely. So if you don't want to see any spoilers of gameplay, that kind of stuff, just minimize the video and listen to my voice. And that's that pretty much. So when it comes down to spoilers, I'm gonna try to basically not give you any, because I do think this game is best experienced going in blind, to have your mind blown, so to speak. So, when it comes down to Final Fantasy VII, it's a franchise that on one hand I am fond of, because when I was a kid I did watch the Advent Children movie quite a bit. Rewatched that thing not too long ago, like maybe a year, a few months ago or something like that, and I do still quite enjoy that movie, also like graphics and that kind of stuff. But of course, I didn't really know the actual backstory of the game, because I never played the original Final Fantasy VII when I was younger. We didn't own a PS1, for example, so I couldn't play it. And then the Steam version did come out. I don't know when it came out, but I did decide to buy it at some point when it was on sale. But I never actually played it because it was very buggy for me and I couldn't really get past the first loading screen, so to speak, because it just kept crashing on me and I kind of gave up very quickly. Because, of course, I didn't really know much of the game, and the only reason why I was slightly interested in it was because of the Advent Children movie. Now, when the remake was gonna come out, I did see some stuff about it. I wasn't super interested in it, because, of course, like as I said, my interest with the Final Fantasy game itself wasn't really there. But anyways, I didn't buy it when it came out until my friends just kept recommending it to me. And not only just one friend, a few friends just kept saying, Mike, go play this game because you're gonna love it. This is amazing, the story is fantastic, the gameplay is good, and all of that kind of stuff. So eventually, after a few days, I gave in. And then I spent pretty much the next 4 days just obsessively playing this game. Because that's just how good it is. So let's talk about all of the different things about the game. Of course, story is not going to be one of those, and then kind of give my opinions on each and every one of those. Now, when it comes down to the game experience, so to speak, it is still an RPG. So you do have like your normal main story quest that you're going to be following, and you also have some side quests here and there. There's even some secret and hidden quests as well, where you have to do some very special stuff to get those. Of course, I'm not going to say how you can get them, that's something for you to discover yourself. There's some really cool stuff, like certain decisions that you make will also affect certain gameplay attributes later, so to speak, like for example costumes and that kind of stuff, and other things, but I'm not going to say what those are. But basically, there's a lot of cool stuff to discover in this game, and depending on what you do as a player, some things might differ from one playthrough through the next, which I think is really cool. When it comes down to the gameplay experience itself, to me, it felt like I was playing a movie, so to speak. So this game has a lot of cutscenes, and the way how they handled cutscenes is really cool as well. So there's two types of cutscenes that we have. We have the CGI cutscenes, like for example what you see in the opening cinematic here, that's fully CGI and that kind of stuff. And you have your in-engine cutscene, I believe is what they call it. Like basically, they just make a cutscene with the character models as they are in the game itself. Now, when it comes down to your main cast of characters, they are incredibly well built. When it comes down to like the character models and that kind of stuff, just beautiful. Of course, certain NPCs, they are not as amazingly built, but that's also to be expected, because otherwise, like, you're already allocating a lot of budget to voice acting and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of normal that NPC number 250 doesn't look as graphically amazing as your main cast of characters, of course. So that's only to be expected. But it did make that there's kind of a slight disconnect here or there sometimes. Certain textures look weird a little bit here or there as well. There were, of course, the limitations that PS4 has, so it is locked at 60 FPS. Certain graphics do pop in here or there, but you can kind of chalk that up to PS4 limitations. And when this game eventually comes to PC, I'm still hopeful for that. Or, of course, when the PS5 comes out later this year, I think that is, I am quite interested to see how the graphics can be even more upgraded, because I think what they did with the technology that is available for the PS4 is just fantastic. All of the cutscenes, whether it be in-engine cutscene, CGI cutscene, anything like that, it all flows together really smoothly, and it makes for an incredibly great experience, because sometimes you're just going to be running around, you get a cutscene, you're then all of a sudden go into combat, you get a cutscene mid-combat, but it all flows together so smooth that, as I said, it feels like you're playing a movie. You're watching a movie, and then every now and then it just gives you a controller, and then it's like, okay, you play for a few minutes now, and then we'll take over again with another cutscene, and then you fight a boss, and then maybe mid-boss fight we'll throw in another cutscene where the boss does some kind of crazy attack or something like that, and then it's up to you again. So it felt really amazing playing this game. It just felt like you were playing a movie, and the graphics really add to that. Because of course the graphics look so great when you're playing, it also means that when they do these cutscenes with the in-engine graphics, it still feels incredibly immersive. And another thing that leads, that adds to that, is the fact that there's no real loading screens. The only time that you get loading screens is when you skip cutscenes, which, to be honest, you should never do unless you're playing through it for a second or a third time or something like that. But yeah, so when you skip cutscenes, when you finish a chapter, or when you do fast travel stuff, like at some point in the game you unlock fast travel, and then of course you get some loading screens as you go from one area to the next. But as long as you're in that same like chapter, so to speak, if you don't go from like chapter 1 to chapter 2 or something like that, then there's no loading screens anywhere. So it makes for a very seamless experience, which really adds to the game itself. So you have this really story-driven game that has a lot of cutscenes involved. Like literally half of the game's playtime is you just watching cutscenes, and then you have like your gameplay here or there as well. And then of course there are certain parts of the game where you're running around a whole lot more, like with questing and that kind of stuff, which I thought was great. Now the only thing when it came down to pacing that I maybe was not that big of a fan of was the side quests. Of course you are playing through a very lengthy main story quest. It took me about, I think, 28 hours or something like that to finish my first playthrough. And of course, I did do all of the side quests and the kind of stuff. So I do want to say that, of course, not all of the hidden and the secret ones, because I do have to go and find them myself. But when it came down to like the normal first playthrough, I did explore a lot. I did do all of the side quests and the kind of stuff. It took me about 28 hours. But there are some parts where you're constantly engaging with this main storyline, and then at some point, the characters themselves will say as well, are you sure you wish to continue with the story? Because once we go past this point, there's no turning back, or something like that. Like you go to a next area, or you go someplace where you can't go back from immediately because of the main story that wants to progress and that kind of stuff. So at some points, all of a sudden it's like, I do want to continue because I really want to know what's going to happen next, but on the other hand, it's like there are 5 side quests waiting that I kind of want to do as well. So there's kind of a little bit of a disconnect here or there with the pacing, which for me personally, I wasn't a huge fan of because I just wanted to continue with that main story. On the other hand, it wasn't too bad either because all of the side quests do add to the world, introduce certain characters, expand more on certain characters that you get to know in the main story, have you fight special like mini bosses and that kind of stuff as well. So the side quests are definitely worth doing. It's just a little bit unfortunate that the main story is just so good and so engaging that you kind of don't want to do the side quests from time to time because you just want to keep going with the story. So that's kind of that. That's the story, that is the experience with the graphics and that kind of stuff. Really enjoyed everything of it. Now, when it comes down to the gameplay itself, or more specifically the combat, I guess I should say, that's where I have a little bit more mixed feelings. So I did say with the graphics, a little bit of mixed feelings with the fact that some stuff looks so incredible that the stuff that looks more normal kind of stands out as not looking that great. When it comes down to the combat itself, I think there are a lot of really good things. I also just finished chapter 1 on hard mode to basically get a more challenging combat experience, so to speak. All of the gameplay that you see, by the way, is on normal mode. There are 4 different, well, I'll just say about like the different game difficulties that there are. So there's 4 different ones. You have auto, in which pretty much everything plays itself and it's mainly just there for you to enjoy the story. You have easy mode, where it's basically the same as the other modes, but it's just a much easier experience. You deal more damage, you take less damage, that kind of stuff. You have normal mode, which is the hardest difficulty available when you first play through the game, and then you have hard mode, which becomes available in New Game Plus, so to speak. So I did play the first one on hard mode, then the combat becomes a whole lot more challenging. I did enjoy it a lot more than, for example, normal mode or easy mode, which I tried out at the beginning. And I'm gonna play through it a little bit more with hard mode, but I still have some problems with the gameplay, so to speak, on how it functions. So the way how your character progression works is you, of course, you level up, and with leveling up you gain skill points and that kind of stuff. Now, you have all of your different weapons that you can equip, and each weapon has a specific skill attached to it. Now, when it comes down to those skills and that kind of stuff, you basically have to use the skill that is attached to your weapon for your character itself to learn that skill. So say, for example, with the Buster Sword, I think it's called, that I'm using here in the gameplay, it has Braver and then that like charging dash thing where I just like stab the enemy. Like those are kind of like the two skills that are attached to that weapon. And if I were to switch to a different weapon, I need to first learn those skills in order to be able to use them on a different weapon. And then each different weapon that you come across has their own unique skill. And then basically when that weapon is equipped, you can use that skill, use the skill enough, and then your character learns the skill so that when you switch to a different weapon, you still have access to it, which I think was really cool. With the materia system, there's also some really cool stuff. Materia in this game are basically skills. So if you equip fire materia, then all of a sudden you get access to the spell fire and that kind of stuff. So I thought it was really cool. There's also some really cool combinations that you can do with materia, like linking them together. I'm not going to go into that too much, but you can do some really cool stuff, like for example, a healing materia linked together with a magnify materia makes it so that your heal becomes an AoE heal or something like that. There's a lot more cooler things that you can do with these combinations, but that's why I'm going to keep at it for now. So yeah, that's some cool stuff that you can do with the equipment and with skill learning and that kind of stuff. Now, when it comes down to the actual combat itself, it kind of feels like a mixture of three different things. So first of all, it kind of feels like a hack and slash game because you're just like whacking your sword around. Each character also has like a special attack, or for example, when it comes down to Cloud, he has a special stance where some of his attacks change and that kind of stuff, which felt alright. Together with this, as long as you're attacking or receiving damage, you're also building an ATB gauge, which is what you're using to spend on skills, magic, or items. So you have the hack and slash portion of the game where you can just like dodge attacks, attack yourself and that kind of stuff. And as you're doing that, you build your gauge, and then when that gauge is full, you can use that on an action. This action can be a skill, which is just normal. It can be a spell, which also requires you to have MP points, of course. And then you can also use an item, which of course needs for you to have the item in your inventory and that kind of stuff as well. When it comes down to hard mode, you can't use items. So that's a really important thing to know, because it's going to make it just that much harder. Now, I do think that this flow of combat felt pretty cool. Like your enemies use their own skills, you have your skills that are tied to your ATB system. I thought it all flowed together pretty nice. Now, the thing I don't like that much about it is that it kind of feels like a Dark Souls game as well. And with that I mean that there are some really frame perfect dodges that you have to do for some attacks, and some attacks it feels like just very unfair, and it almost feels like you just can't dodge them, period, and that you'll just have to guard against them and take the damage. Now, I do guess that you can kind of chalk it up to the fact that Final Fantasy VII used to be a turn-based game and you're meant to take damage at some points. But when you mix that together with a gameplay style or a combat style that is very focused around you dodging attacks and that kind of stuff, it does feel a bit unfair at some points. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into it because, of course, as I said, I did start playing the hard mode of the game and that kind of stuff, and it does feel a lot more rewarding. But it is still a problem that I personally had, might still have going into the future, because I'm gonna keep playing hard mode a little bit more and see whether or not my opinion changes on this stance. Maybe I'll do like a follow-up video where I talk about some hard mode specific stuff. But for now, I think the combat has a very good, what should I call it? A very good concept. Like conceptually the combat feels really good. Like it feels good to play as well. Like you're just hacking, slashing, you have your ATB system, you're dodging the special attacks that your enemies are throwing out. But then certain auto attacks or certain other attacks that they do just feel almost impossible to dodge, and it feels a little bit unfair at times. Of course, maybe with more experience I will open up to it a little bit more, but I'll have to wait and see about that. Now, of course, if you don't want to deal with all of that annoying stuff, just don't play hard mode, simple enough. And you can always just play it on easy mode or something like that, which I did for like half of my playthrough or something like that, because I just couldn't be asked with the combat at some points. Of course, as I said, I am gonna play hard mode, so I do want to see whether or not I can open up to the combat, and if I do, then I'll definitely make a follow-up video to kind of talk about those kind of specific. But for now, that's kind of all I wanted to talk about. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a beautiful game. I first was a little bit set off of it because it was 70 euros, and I'm like, that's really expensive. Especially if all of the different parts are gonna be 70 euros, but in my opinion it was definitely worth the money. The game is fantastic, not only when it comes down to story, but also when like the way it looks is just crazy, how all of your combat flows together with the cutscenes and that kind of stuff. Really well done. I really couldn't have asked for a better game, and pretty much all of my friends that have played it as well, especially the ones that played the original back in the day, they're all really hype about the game and they're all really enjoying it. And we're all looking forward to part 2 to come out in the future as well. So that's all I wanted to talk about in this video. Let me know in the comments what you think of Final Fantasy VII, whether or not you enjoyed it or something like that. Do hopefully like try to keep the comments a little bit spoiler free as well, because I don't want people to get spoiled on the game, because that is one of the big drawbacks. Like I got spoiled on one of the plot points, which kind of made me enjoy or not enjoy that scene a little bit less, so to speak. But yeah, so try to keep it spoiler free in the comments if you do want to give your opinion or that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm rambling on for way too long. I didn't want to make this. I wanted to make this video like 10 to 15 minutes, and here we are like almost 17 minutes long. So that's all I want to say for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank my Patreons for supporting me, and I'll see you in the next one.